Maya Winters had always prided herself on being in control. As the lead veterinarian at Moonstone Animal Hospital and Beta of the Crescent Moon Pack, she thrived on order, routine, and the satisfying predictability of her life, which was exactly why waking up in a massive king-sized bed that definitely wasn't hers, in a body that felt entirely wrong, sent her into complete panic. The first thing she noticed was how much higher up she was. Maya stood 5'4" on a good day, but now she seemed to tower over everything. Her hands, except they weren't her hands, were enormous, calloused, and distinctly masculine. She stumbled toward what she hoped was a bathroom, catching her reflection in a full-length mirror that made her stomach drop. Staring back at her was Damon Cross. The Damon Cross, alpha of the Iron Ridge Pack, CEO of Cross Construction, and the most insufferably arrogant bear shifter she'd ever had the misfortune to meet. They'd clashed exactly 3 times in pack politics meetings, and each encounter had left Maya wanting to shift and take a chunk out of his smug face. What the hell? The voice that came out wasn't her melodic alto but Damon's deep baritone, rough with sleep and confusion. Maya and Damon's body grabbed the edge of the marble countertop, her borrowed muscles tensing as memories of last night crashed back. The autumn equinox gathering, the territorial dispute between 3 local packs that had escalated into near violence. She remembered the ancient oak tree at the neutral meeting ground beginning to glow with an eerie silver light, remembered the way every shifter present had been drawn toward it like moths to flame. And she remembered the exact moment her wolf had recognized someone just before the world went white. Meanwhile, across town in Maya's modest cabin, Damon Cross was having his own crisis. He'd awakened to the scent of lavender and something distinctly smaller. Everything felt wrong. His usually broad shoulders were narrow, his height diminished, and when he'd tried to get out of bed, he'd nearly fallen over from the shift in his center of gravity. The mirror in Maya's simple bathroom showed him a heart-shaped face framed by chestnut waves, amber eyes, wide with his shock, and a body that was undeniably, completely female. A beautiful female, he had to admit, even in his state of panic. "This isn't happening," he muttered, Maya's voice sounding strange to his ears. "This is not happening." But it was happening, and as an alpha, Damon's mind was already working through possibilities. Magic. Had to be magic. The tree last night, there had been stories about it. Old legends his grandmother used to tell about ancient magic that could bind souls, that could. His phone buzzed. Maya's phone. He stared at it for a long moment before answering. "Maya, thank God." The voice was his own, which meant, "We need to talk. Now. I'm assuming you're having the same problem I am," came his voice from the other end, though the cadence was all wrong to precise, too controlled to be him. "If by problem you mean I'm currently wearing your body like an ill-fitting suit, then yes." There was a pause. "Meet me at Neutral Grounds Coffee in an hour." "And Damon?" "Yeah. Try not to ruin my reputation while you're in there." The coffee shop was thankfully empty except for the barista when they arrived. Maya had thrown on Damon's most conservative clothes, dark jeans, and a button-down that still managed to make her borrowed frame look intimidating. Damon had opted for Maya's simple sundress, though he moved with an awkward stiffness that made it clear he had no idea how to navigate life in a female body. They sat across from each other, the surreal nature of the situation hitting them both simultaneously. "This is incredibly weird," Maya said, her voice Damon's voice cutting through the silence. "You think?" Damon gestured to himself with Maya's hands. "I've got a surgery to perform this afternoon, on a Great Dane. Do you have any idea how? And I have a board meeting with the city planning committee about the downtown development project." Maya cut him off. $40 million riding on it. They stared at each other, the full scope of their problem crystallizing. "How?" Damon asked finally. Maya leaned back, Damon's commanding presence making the simple action seem authoritative. "The tree. It has to be. My grandmother used to tell stories. Ancient magic. Something about souls recognizing each other." "Recognizing?" Damon's borrowed amber eyes narrowed. "Mates." The word hung heavy between them. Damon laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Impossible. We can't stand each other. Apparently our souls disagree." The barista chose that moment to approach their table. "Excuse me, but aren't you Maya Winters? I heard you speaking, but..." She looked confused, clearly recognizing Maya's face, but hearing Damon's deeper voice. "Laryngitis," Maya said quickly. "Very severe case." After the barista left, They sat in heavy silence. We need to figure out how to switch back, Damon said finally. Agreed. But until we do, Maya gestured between them. We're going to have to live each other's lives. I don't know anything about being a veterinarian, and I don't know anything about construction or alpha politics. They looked at each other across the small table, two strangers trapped in the most intimate situation possible. And Maya felt something shift in her chest, something that felt suspiciously like recognition, like coming home, which was absolutely the last thing she needed right now. We start with the basics, she said, forcing her voice to remain steady. You tell me everything I need to know to be you, and I'll do the same. Fine. Her eyes met hers. But we figure out how to reverse this fast. I don't care what our souls think they recognize. We're not mates, Maya. We're barely civil to each other. Maya nodded, ignoring the way something deep in Damon's chest seemed to ache at those words. Agreed. This is temporary. But as she watched Damon try to gracefully navigate getting up from the table in her body, as she noticed the way his usual arrogance had been replaced by vulnerability, she wondered if anything about this situation was going to be as simple as they hoped. The real question wasn't how to switch back, it was whether they'd want to by the time they figured it out. The first lesson Maya learned about being Damon Cross was that apparently, he put his pants on both legs at the same time. She discovered this 20 minutes into trying to get dressed for his morning run, after falling over twice attempting his usual routine. The man's coordination was clearly designed for a much larger frame, and Maya's wolf instincts kept trying to compensate for proportions that no longer existed. Okay, walking like a normal human being, she muttered to herself, practicing in front of his bedroom mirror. Not prowling, not slinking, just big confident strides. She took 3 steps and knocked over a lamp. Meanwhile, Damon was learning that Maya's morning routine was apparently designed by someone who had never heard of efficiency. He'd already spent 10 minutes trying to figure out why she had 17 different bottles in her shower, what was a pre-shampoo treatment, and another 5 minutes discovering that her hair required an engineering degree to manage. How does she do anything with all this hair? He grumbled, attempting to wrangle the chestnut waves into something resembling order. The result looked like he'd been electrocuted. Maya's phone rang. Maya, sweetie, you sound terrible, came a woman's voice. Are you still sick? Damon panicked. He had no idea who this was. Yes, very sick. Laryngitis. Can't really talk. Oh no. Well, don't forget you're covering the late shift at the clinic today. Dr. Peterson had to leave for his daughter's wedding, remember? Late shift. Clinic. Right. Of course. Wouldn't miss it. Are you sure you're okay? You sound different. New medication. Makes me sound deeper. After hanging up, Damon sat on Maya's bed and put his head in his hands. Her hands. This was a disaster. An hour later, they met at the coffee shop again, both looking frazzled. Please tell me you know how to perform a space surgery, Damon said without preamble, sliding into the booth across from Maya. Please tell me you know what a P&L statement is, Maya countered. They stared at each other. We're doomed, they said simultaneously. Okay, crash course time. Maya pulled out a notebook. Apparently Damon was the type to carry notebooks, which she found oddly endearing. Tell me about your morning routine. Run 5 miles, protein shake, check construction sites, office by 8:30. He paused, studying her with his own eyes. Why are you walking like that? Like what? Like you're trying to take up as much space as possible. Maya straightened Damon's shoulders even more. Isn't that how alphas walk? All commanding and territorial? Damon snorted, a sound that was distinctly unladylike coming from Maya's delicate features. I don't swagger like I'm in a bad Western movie. You absolutely swagger. I do not swagger. You swagger so hard that squirrels move out of your way. Despite himself, Damon felt Maya's lips twitch into a smile. That's just being efficiently intimidating. Aha. So you admit to being intimidating. Well, obviously. I'm an alpha bear shifter who runs a construction company. Intimidating is part of the job description. Maya made a note. Right. Intimidating. But not ridiculous. Got it. She looked up. Your turn. What am I doing wrong? Damon gestured vaguely at her. His everything. You're sitting like you're about to pounce on someone. That's how I always sit. In my body, it looks like you're planning to bench press the table. Maya consciously relaxed Damon's shoulders. Better? Less like you're about to challenge someone to arm wrestling. Yes. They spent the next hour going over the basics. Maya learned that Damon took his coffee black, never showed weakness in front of his crew, and had a habit of drumming his fingers when he was thinking. Damon learned that Maya was secretly left-handed, despite appearing ambidextrous, had a nervous habit of tucking hair behind her ear, and apparently smiled at every animal she met. "Wait," Maya said, looking up from her notes. "You've been watching me enough to notice that I smile at animals?" Damon and Maya's body blushed, which was fascinating to watch on her usually composed features. "It's hard not to notice. You passed a golden retriever puppy at the farmer's market last month and nearly tripped over a fruit stand because you were too busy making faces at it. You remember that?" It was. Damon paused, looking uncomfortable. Ridiculous. Completely unprofessional. But the way he said it, Maya got the distinct impression he'd found it anything but ridiculous. Their first real test came that afternoon when Maya walked into the Cross construction office. Damon's assistant, Jennifer, looked up with relief. "Oh, good, you're here. The Morrison project is having foundation issues, and the city inspector is being difficult about the permits for the Riverside development." Maya nodded sagely, having absolutely no idea what any of that meant. "Right, foundation issues. Very foundational." Jennifer stared at her. "Are you feeling all right, Mr. Cross?" "Fine, just thinking deeply about construction things, sir." Maya cleared her throat, trying to channel every alpha she'd ever known. "I need a full report on all of the construction situations on my desk in an hour." Jennifer's eyebrows rose. "All of them?" "Yes, all the foundation situations and permit things. That would be over 40 active projects, sir." "Perfect. 40. Maya nodded firmly and strode into Damon's office, immediately tripping over his ridiculously large chair. Across town, Damon was having his own crisis. He stood in exam room 3 of Moonstone Animal Hospital, staring at Mrs. Henderson's ancient Siamese cat, Mr. Whiskers, who was apparently due for his annual checkup. "Well, Dr. Winters?" Mrs. Henderson prompted. "How does he look?" Damon picked up the cat, who immediately began purring. This was encouraging. He could handle a cat. Cats were like small, furry construction projects. "He looks very..." Damon searched for medical terminology. "Cat-like." Mrs. Henderson frowned. "Is that good?" "Very good. Extremely cat-like. Most cat-like cat I've seen all day." Mr. Whiskers chose that moment to try to climb onto Damon's shoulder. Damon, startled by the sudden movement, jerked backward and knocked over a tray of medical instruments, which clattered to the floor with tremendous noise. Mr. Whiskers yowled and launched himself onto the ceiling-mounted examination light, which began swinging wildly. "Oh my," Mrs. Henderson said. This is normal," Damon said desperately, trying to coax the cat down while medical instruments rolled around the floor. "Very normal cat behavior. Should he be hanging from the light fixture? Cats love heights. It's very natural." Mr. Whiskers chose that moment to leap from the light directly onto Damon's head, where he clung with all 4 sets of claws. "Dr. Winters," Mrs. Henderson said slowly, "are you quite sure you're feeling well?" By evening, they were both exhausted and slightly traumatized. They met at Maya's cabin, having agreed that Damon's penthouse felt too formal for their crisis debrief. "How did it go?" Maya asked, opening the door to reveal Damon in her favorite sundress, her hair still looking like he'd styled it with a blender. "I may have accidentally diagnosed a perfectly healthy cat with severe catness and got attacked by a ceiling light," Damon said, collapsing onto her couch. "Your turn. I think I may have committed your company to building 40 foundations simultaneously, and I called a cement mixer a concrete spinny thing in front of your foreman." They sat in silence for a moment. "We're getting better at this, right?" Damon asked hopefully. Maya looked at him, really looked at him. His usual arrogance was completely gone, replaced by vulnerability and exhaustion. In her body, without his intimidating size and commanding presence, he looked almost sweet. "Damon, yeah. Why do you always wear such expensive suits?" The question seemed to catch him off guard. "What? Your closet is full of suits that cost more than my car. But you run construction sites. Don't you get dirty?" Damon was quiet for a long moment, Maya's hands fidgeting with the hem of the sundress. "My father always said that if you want people to respect you, you have to look like you deserve it." There was something in his voice, Maya's voice, that made her chest ache. "Do you think that's true?" "I don't know anymore." He looked up at her with her own amber eyes. "Today, wearing your dress, I felt more, I don't know, more like myself than I have in years. Does that make sense? Maya felt something shift in her chest. The same recognition from yesterday, but stronger now, like puzzle pieces clicking into place. Yeah, she said softly, it does. And for the first time since this whole mess started, Maya wondered if maybe their souls knew something they didn't. Day 3 of the body swap brought Maya face to face with her worst nightmare, the Morrison project meeting. She sat at the head of the conference table in Damon's body, wearing his most intimidating suit, surrounded by 12 men who looked like they could bench press small buildings. The Morrison family patriarch, Bill Morrison, was explaining something involving load-bearing beams and structural integrity, while Maya nodded and tried to look like she understood. So, Cross, what do you think about the foundation issue? Bill asked, leaning back in his chair. Maya's mind went completely blank. Foundation issue, right, the thing Jennifer had mentioned. She cleared her throat, channeling every construction documentary she'd ever half-watched. Well, she said in Damon's authoritative voice, foundations are very foundational. The room went silent. They support things, she continued, gaining confidence. Heavy things, like walls and roofs, very important for keeping buildings upright. Bill Morrison stared at her. Are you feeling all right, Damon? Never better, Maya said firmly. In fact, I think we should make the foundation extra foundational. Double the foundation materials. Double the concrete? Morrison's site foreman looked alarmed. That would add $300,000 to the budget. Money is no object when it comes to, Maya gestured vaguely, structural foundationing. Meanwhile, across town, Damon was learning that veterinary medicine was significantly more complex than he'd anticipated. He stood in surgery prep, staring at a sedated golden retriever named Buddy, who was scheduled for what the chart ominously called an exploratory laparotomy. The vet tech Sarah was laying out instruments that looked suspiciously medieval. Dr. Winters, are you ready to begin? Sarah asked. Damon looked at the array of scalpels and clamps. Ready is a relative term, sir. I mean, yes, very ready. Extremely prepared for this medical procedure. He picked up what he hoped was the right instrument. It looked sharp and medical, which seemed promising. Dr. Winters, Sarah said slowly, that's a retractor. I know that, Damon said quickly. I was just checking its retractability. 30 minutes later, Damon had managed to make the first incision without killing anyone, though he'd also accidentally tried to use a thermometer as a scalpel. Called the anesthesia machine the sleepy time equipment and asked Sarah if she could just point him toward the broken bit. Dr. Winters, Sarah whispered urgently, Mr. Peterson is here early from his daughter's wedding. He wants to check on his surgeries. Damon froze, hands still inside Buddy's abdomen. Define here. Walking down the hall. He'll be here in 30 seconds. Can we pretend this didn't happen? Sir, you're currently elbow deep in a dog. The door opened, and Dr. Peterson walked in, still wearing his wedding guest attire. Maya, how's our boy Buddy doing? Damon looked up, Maya's face pale with terror. He's very inside out at the moment. I can see that. Dr. Peterson moved closer, his expression growing concerned as he looked at the incision site. Is everything all right? This looks different, Damon supplied hopefully. Like you've never performed surgery before in your life. There was a long, awkward pause. I'm having a very off day, Damon said finally. Maya, step aside. Let me finish this. As Dr. Peterson took over, skillfully completing the surgery that Damon had been butchering, Damon realized he'd never felt smaller in his entire life, not even when he was actually in his own 6-foot frame. That evening, they met at Maya's cabin again, both looking shell-shocked. I think I may have accidentally bankrupted your company, Maya said without preamble, handing Damon a beer. I nearly killed a dog, Damon replied, accepting the bottle gratefully. What? Exploratory surgery. I explored all right. I explored everything except the actual problem. He took a long drink. Dr. Peterson had to save both me and Buddy. Oh God. Maya sat down heavily on the couch. I told the Morrison project team to use twice as much concrete as necessary. Apparently, that's not how construction works. You what? I panicked. They were using all these technical terms, and I thought if I just made everything bigger and more foundational, it would work out. Damon stared at her. then started laughing. Maya's bright musical laugh coming from his intimidating frame was so incongruous that Maya started laughing too. "We're disasters," Damon gasped between laughs. "Complete disasters," Maya agreed. "Your foreman asked if I'd suffered a head injury. Dr. Peterson asked if I needed a psychiatric evaluation." They laughed until they cried, the stress and absurdity of the situation finally catching up with them. "Damon," Maya said when they'd finally calmed down, "can I ask you something? After today, you can ask me anything. Why construction? I mean, you're clearly smart enough to do anything. Why choose something so physical?" Damon was quiet for a moment, Maya's smaller hands wrapped around the beer bottle. "My dad wanted me to go into finance. Said construction was beneath the family name." He paused. "I chose it specifically because he hated it." Rebellion? More like, "I wanted to build something real, something that would last." He looked at her with her own eyes. "What about you? Why veterinary medicine?" Maya smiled sadly with Damon's features. "My wolf was always drawn to herd animals. Even as a kid, I'd bring home every injured bird, every stray cat." She paused. "My parents thought it was too messy, too emotional for a beta. They wanted me to go into pack administration, politics instead of healing." "Exactly." She looked at him. "I guess we both disappointed our parents. Maybe that's not such a bad thing." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the weight of their revelations settling between them. "Maya, yeah? When this is over, when we figure out how to switch back, I'd like to see your clinic, the real way, not as a patient or a disaster in progress." Maya felt something warm unfurl in Damon's chest. "I'd like that. And I'd like to see one of your construction sites. Maybe understand what you're actually building. It's a deal." As they sat there, sharing beer and comfortable silence, Maya realized that for the first time in 3 days, she wasn't thinking about switching back. She was thinking about switching perspectives, about seeing the world through someone else's eyes and liking what she found there. "Damon, tomorrow, when we inevitably mess up our jobs again, yeah? Let's mess up together. I'll come to the clinic with you, and you can come to the construction site with me. Emergency backup." Damon smiled, Maya's face lighting up in a way that made her heart skip. Partners in disaster? Partners in disaster. And for the first time since this whole mess began, that didn't sound like such a bad thing. "Okay, rule number 1, Maya said, standing in Damon's penthouse kitchen at dawn. When you're suturing, think of it like really precise construction." Damon, looking decidedly more comfortable in Maya's sundress after 3 days of practice, raised an eyebrow. "Construction doesn't usually involve keeping things alive." "Fair point. Think of it like building something that needs to heal itself." The ED decided to spend the morning doing practice runs, Maya teaching Damon basic veterinary skills while he showed her the fundamentals of reading construction plans. Their partners in disaster pact was already paying off. "Show me the running stitch again," Damon said, picking up the practice suture kit Maya had borrowed from the clinic. Maya guided her hands through the motion, gentle but firm. "Like you're stitching leather, but the leather has feelings." "That's the most ridiculous analogy I've ever heard." "Hey, I've seen you work. You're actually very gentle when you think no one's looking." Damon paused mid-stitch. "What do you mean?" "Yesterday, when we went to your construction site together, you spent 10 minutes adjusting the safety harness for that new kid, Marcus. Made sure it fit perfectly, showed him the proper knots twice." "You didn't have to do that. It's just safety protocol." "Damon," Maya's voice was soft, "you bought him new work boots. I saw the receipt on your desk." Damon's borrowed hands stilled. His old ones were falling apart. "It's a liability issue. Size 11 Timberlands, top of the line. For a part-time summer worker. Maya, you care about people more than you want anyone to know." There was a long silence. Damon set down the suture needle and looked at her with her own ember eyes. "My father always said caring was a weakness, that people would take advantage." "Do they? Take advantage?" "Sometimes." He paused. "But Marcus has been working twice as hard since I got him those boots. And his sister needed the money from his job for her college textbooks." Maya felt something squeeze tight in Damon's chest. "How did you know about his sister?" I asked. "People always think asking is weakness, too. But how else do you know what someone needs?" Maya stared at him, seeing him clearly for the first time. Not the arrogant alpha she'd assumed he was, but someone who'd built walls so high that his kindness was invisible from the outside. "Your turn," Damon said, clearly uncomfortable with the scrutiny. Show me how to read these blueprints without destroying anything. They moved to Damon's dining room table, which was covered with construction plans for the Riverside Development Project. Maya spread out the largest blueprint, trying to make sense of the maze of lines and symbols. Okay, so these thick lines are walls, she said, tracing them with her finger. Load-bearing walls, Damon corrected. The thin lines are just partitions. Right, and these little squares are windows. Doors are the gaps in the walls, with the arcs showing which way they swing. Maya nodded, beginning to see the pattern. It's like a map of a building that doesn't exist yet. Exactly. Except every line has to be perfect, because one mistake can bring down the whole structure. Is that why you're so? Maya searched for the right word. Controlling? I was going to say thorough. Damon laughed, a sound that was still strange coming from Maya's delicate frame. My crew would disagree with you. Would they? Because I've been watching you this week. You don't just bark orders. You explain why things need to be done a certain way. You check on people. That's just good management, Damon. Maya caught his borrowed hands, stilling them on the blueprint. You drove Marcus home yesterday when his car wouldn't start, and you stopped to help Mrs. Chen carry groceries to her door, and you left a $20 tip for coffee that costs $4. You've been watching me very closely. Hard not to when I'm living your life. Maya's voice was soft. The question is, why do you hide it? The caring, I mean. Damon was quiet for so long that Maya thought he wasn't going to answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. Because my father was right about one thing. When people know you care, they can hurt you. He looked up at her with her own eyes. My ex-fiancée, Rebecca. She knew exactly how much I cared about her. You stood against me for 2 years before I finally realized she was only with me for the money and status. Maya's heart clenched. Damon. She called me boring, said I was too serious, too focused on work, not exciting enough. He laughed bitterly. Funny thing is, she was probably right. She was an idiot. The words came out with such fierce conviction that Damon looked startled. I'm serious, Maya continued. I've been you for days, and boring is the last word I'd use. Stubborn? Yes. Overly protective? Absolutely. But boring? She shook her head. You notice everything. You remember how everyone takes their coffee. You know all your workers' kids' names, and you've got 17 different books on your nightstand, ranging from construction engineering to poetry. You looked at my books? Your copy of Pablo Neruda is practically falling apart from being read so much. Damon blushed, Maya's fair skin turning pink. That's just beautiful. It's beautiful. Maya moved closer, still in Damon's body, but her movements entirely her own. Do you want to know what I think? I'm afraid to ask. I think Rebecca was intimidated by how deeply you feel things. People who can't love deeply are always threatened by people who can. They stared at each other across the blueprint-covered table, the weight of the revelation hanging between them. Maya, Damon said quietly, what about you? What happened to make you so afraid of letting people in? Maya's immediate instinct was to deflect, to make a joke or change the subject. But something about being in Damon's body, seeing the world from his perspective, made her want to be honest. There was someone, she said finally. Another beta from a neighboring pack. James, what happened? I thought he understood me, thought he loved me for who I was. Maya's voice grew bitter. Turns out he loved the idea of me. The successful veterinarian, the perfect beta wife who would make him look good. How did you find out? I overheard him talking to his friends at a pack gathering. He said I was too intense, too emotional about my work. That once we were mated, he'd help me tone it down so I could focus on more important things, like planning pack social events. Damon's expression darkened. Please tell me you ended it immediately. I did, but not before he told everyone that I was difficult and too set in my ways to be a good mate. Maya shrugged with Damon's broad shoulders. Most of the pack believed him. It is easier to blame the woman who won't compromise than the man who wants to change her. Their loss. You really think so, Maya? Damon's voice was firm. I've watched you work this week. You don't just treat animals, you heal them. You see what they need, what they're afraid of. You're gentle with the scared ones, firm with the aggressive ones, and you never give up. He paused. James was an idiot if he thought that was something you should change. Maya felt tears prick at the corners of Damon's eyes. Thank you. For what? For seeing me. Really seeing me. They stood there in the morning light streaming through Damon's floor to ceiling windows, two souls trapped in the wrong bodies, but finally beginning to understand each other. Maya? Yeah, when we figure out how to switch back. I don't want to go back to being strangers. Maya smiled, and for the first time, Damon's intimidating features looked completely gentle. We could never be strangers now. Not after this. Good, Damon said, moving closer. Because I have a feeling our souls knew exactly what they were doing. And looking at him, really looking at him, Maya was beginning to think he might be right. By day 5, they had developed a system. Maya would handle Damon's morning meetings while he dealt with her early surgeries. Then they'd meet for lunch to debrief and switch focus for the afternoon. It was working surprisingly well, except for the part where Maya kept catching herself staring at Damon when he concentrated on suture techniques. And Damon kept finding excuses to brush Maya's borrowed hands when they reviewed construction plans. You're getting better at this, Maya said, watching Damon practice bandagging techniques on a stuffed animal in her clinic's break room. Mr. Whiskers would be proud. Please don't mention that cat, Damon groaned. I'm pretty sure he's plotting revenge. Cats don't plot revenge. This cat does. He's diabolic. Maya laughed Damon's deep, warm chuckle that she'd grown to love. You're being paranoid. Am I? Because yesterday he knocked over 3 examination lamps just by looking at them. That's called being a cat, Damon. That's called psychological warfare. Their easy banter was interrupted by Sarah, the vet tech, poking her head into the break room. Dr. Winters, the Richmond family is here with Duchess. Emergency labor complications. Maya and Damon exchanged glances. They'd been dreading this moment, a real emergency that required both veterinary expertise and calm authority. We've got this, Maya said firmly, standing up in Damon's body. Remember what we practiced. 20 minutes later, Damon was knelt beside a beautiful golden retriever in active labor, while Maya coached him through the process. Duchess was struggling with her last puppy, and the situation was becoming critical. Okay, gentle traction on the puppy's shoulders, Maya instructed, her voice steady despite being in Damon's intimidating frame. I can feel it, Damon said, Maya's hands working with surprising skill. It's stuck behind the pelvic bone. Can you rotate slightly? Got it. Damon's movements were careful, precise. All those years of delicate construction work translating perfectly to veterinary medicine. There, Maya breathed as the puppy slid free. Is it breathing? Damon quickly cleared the puppy's airways and began gentle chest compressions. For a terrifying moment, nothing happened. Then, a tiny whimper. She's okay, Damon whispered, Maya's voice thick with emotion. She's perfect. Maya felt something shift in her chest as she watched Damon cradle the newborn puppy with infinite gentleness. This man who commanded construction sites and intimidated city officials was sitting on a clinic floor in her sundress, tears streaming down her face as he made sure a tiny puppy was safe. You're amazing, she said softly. Damon looked up at her with her own eyes, still cradling the puppy. We're amazing. I couldn't have done this without you. Mrs. Richmond, who had been watching the entire procedure with tears in her own eyes, shook her head in wonder. Dr. Winters, I've never seen anything like that. You were so calm, so confident. And your assistant, partner, Maya corrected automatically. He's my partner. The word hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning neither of them was quite ready to acknowledge. Later, after the Richmond family had taken Duchess and her 7 healthy puppies home, Maya and Damon sat in the empty clinic, sharing Chinese takeout and basking in the glow of their success. I still can't believe we pulled that off, Damon said, attempting to eat lo mein with chopsticks while navigating Maya's smaller hands. You were incredible, Maya said, meaning it. Where did that come from? I don't know. It felt right, like I was supposed to be doing exactly that, in exactly that moment. Maya nodded, understanding completely. That's how I feel when I'm on your construction sites. Like everything makes sense. They ate in comfortable silence for a while, the weight of their growing connection settling around them like a warm blanket. Maya, can I ask you something that might be too personal? Maya looked at him with Damon's dark eyes. After what we've been through, I don't think anything is too personal anymore. When you were in heat last month, where did you go? Maya nearly choked on her noodles. That's definitely too personal. I'm sorry, I didn't mean no. It's okay. She set down her chopsticks, suddenly serious. I go to a cabin my grandmother left me, up in the mountains. It's isolated, safe, alone, always alone. Damon frowned. That can't be comfortable. It's necessary. Heat makes me vulnerable, too trusting. And after James, She shrugged with Damon's broad shoulders. Better alone than with the wrong person. Maya, yeah, you know that's not how it's supposed to be, right? Heat is supposed to be shared, cherished. Maya felt heat rise in Damon's cheeks. Says the alpha who's been single for 3 years. That's different. How? Because alphas don't have heat cycles that make them physically vulnerable. No, you just have rut cycles that make you emotionally vulnerable. Damon went very still. How do you know about my rut cycles? Your calendar, remember? I've been living your life. Every 3 months, you block out a week and disappear. No meetings, no construction sites, nothing. Maya, where do you go, Damon? He was quiet for so long that Maya thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. The same place, actually. I bought a cabin up in the mountains after Rebecca left. I go there and try not to think about how empty it feels. Maya's heart clenched. Damon, do you know what the worst part is? He looked up at her with her own eyes, and the pain there made her breath catch. It's not the physical discomfort, it's the loneliness. Rut is supposed to be about bonding, about connecting with your mate. Instead, I just endure it. That's not how it's supposed to be either. No, he agreed softly. It's not. They stared at each other across the small table, both understanding the implications of what they'd just shared. Their heats and ruts were synchronized, had been for over a year, though neither had realized it. Maya's heat always started exactly 1 week before Damon's rut, and they both retreated to isolated cabins in the same mountain range. Maya, yeah, your grandmother's cabin. Is it the old stone cottage near Moonrise Lake? Maya's eyes widened. How did you know that? Because my cabin is about 2 miles south of there. I've seen smoke from your chimney during my difficult weeks. The realization hit them both simultaneously. For over a year, they'd been suffering through their cycles alone, mere miles apart, never knowing that their perfect match was so close. Oh, Maya breathed. Yeah, oh. They sat in stunned silence, the magnitude of what they'd discovered settling over them. The universe has a twisted sense of humor, Damon said finally. Or maybe, Maya said softly, it knew we needed time to find each other first. Damon reached across the table and took his hand in hers. Maya, I need you to know something. What? When we switch back, when this is over, I don't want to go back to being adversaries. What do you want? Damon's borrowed amber eyes met hers. I want to try, really try, not just as friends, but as mates. The word hung between them, heavy with possibility and terror and hope. Yeah, Damon said softly, mates. Maya felt something settle into place in her chest, like a key turning in a lock she didn't know existed. I want that too, she whispered. And for the first time since this whole crazy situation began, Maya realized she wasn't thinking about switching back anymore. She was thinking about moving forward together. Day 6 started like any other, with Maya successfully navigating Damon's morning run without falling over, and Damon managing to make coffee in Maya's kitchen without breaking anything. They had found their rhythm, their partnership, and Maya was beginning to think that maybe being stuck in the wrong body wasn't such a disaster after all. That illusion shattered at 10:47 a.m. when Maya's phone rang. Maya, thank God, came Dr. Peterson's panicked voice. There's been an accident at the Cross construction site. Multiple injuries. We need you here now. Maya's blood ran cold. What kind of accident? Scaffolding collapse. 3 workers, including that young kid you've been mentoring, Marcus. The phone slipped from Maya's numb fingers. Marcus. Sweet, eager Marcus, with the college-bound sister and the worn-out work boots. Marcus, whom Damon had taken under his wing, whom he'd worried about like a father. She was running before she realized she'd moved, Damon's longer stride, eating up the distance to her clinic. She burst through the doors to find Damon and her body pale and shaking as Sarah explained the situation. It's bad, Damon said without preamble when he saw her. Critical injuries. They're being airlifted to the trauma center, but what? Marcus took the worst of it. Spinal trauma. They don't know if he'll walk again. Maya watched Damon's borrowed face crumple, saw him try to hold himself together in her smaller frame, and felt something fierce and protective rise in her chest. We need to get to the hospital, she said firmly. Maya, there's more. Damon's voice was barely above a whisper. The accident. It happened because of the foundation modifications. Maya's stomach dropped. The ones I authorized? The extra concrete changed the weight distribution. The scaffolding wasn't rated for the additional load. Damon's voice was hollow. This is my fault. I should have caught it. should have been there. No, Maya said fiercely. This is my fault. I made the decision without understanding the consequences. You were trying to help. I was trying to fake my way through your job, and now Marcus is. Maya's voice broke. They stood in the clinic, both drowning in guilt and horror, when Sarah cleared her throat. I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's something else. The insurance investigators are already asking questions. If they determine it was due to unauthorized modifications. Maya and Damon stared at each other, the implications sinking in. Cross Construction could be held liable. Damon could lose everything: his company, his reputation, his ability to provide for his workers. We have to tell them the truth, Maya said. What truth? That you've been impersonating me for a week? That we switched bodies and you made construction decisions while I performed surgery? Damon laughed bitterly. They'll think we're insane. Then we take responsibility. What are you saying? Damon looked at her with her own amber eyes, and Maya saw steel there, the alpha determination that had built an empire from nothing. I'm saying we stick to the story. Damon Cross made a poor judgment call. My winners had nothing to do with it. I won't let you do that. It's not your choice. Like hell it isn't. They were toe-to-toe now, Maya's borrowed height allowing her to loom over Damon for once. But instead of backing down, Damon stepped closer, Maya's delicate frame radiating alpha authority. Listen to me, he said quietly. You have a clinic full of animals depending on you, patients who need you. I won't let you throw that away for my mistakes. And I won't let you throw away everything you've built for mine. Maya, no, Damon. We're partners, remember? Partners in disaster, partners in success, partners in whatever comes next. That means we face this together. They stared at each other, both stubborn, both terrified, both willing to sacrifice everything to protect the other. There has to be another way, Maya said finally. What way? Magic? Some miracle that explains how we both made decisions we shouldn't have been qualified to make? Maya went very still. Magic. Maya, I was being sarcastic. No, listen. Magic got us into this mess. What if magic can get us out of it? What are you talking about? The tree. The ancient oak at the neutral meeting ground. We need to go back there. Damon stared at her like she'd lost her mind. Maya, we have a crisis to deal with. This isn't the time for it's exactly the time. Maya grabbed his borrowed hands. Damon, what if we can switch back? What if Damon Cross can be at the accident site, taking responsibility, while Maya Winters is safely at her clinic with no connection to the construction modifications? That's actually not completely insane. It's our only shot. Damon was quiet for a long moment, clearly thinking through the possibilities. Finally, he nodded. Okay, but Maya, if this doesn't work, it has to work. Because I refuse to let you destroy your life for my mistakes, and I refuse to let Marcus suffer because we were too proud to ask for help. They were interrupted by Maya's phone buzzing with a text from the hospital. Marcus, stable but critical. Surgery in 2 hours. Need family consent. His parents are in Florida visiting his grandmother, Damon said numbly. I'm his emergency contact. Then we better hope magic works fast. As they raced toward Damon's truck, Maya caught sight of their reflection in the hospital windows, Damon's imposing frame moving with her determined gait, her petite body radiating his protective fury. They looked like what they were, two souls who had found each other at exactly the wrong time, willing to risk everything to make things right. Maya, yeah, whatever happens, I'm glad it was you. I'm glad we found each other, even like this. Maya felt tears prick at Damon's eyes. Me too. Even if we lose everything, I'm glad we found each other. The tree was waiting for them in the gathering dusk, its silver bark seeming to pulse with inner light. As they approached, Maya felt something shift in the air, like the moment before a storm breaks. Now what? Damon asked. Now we ask for help, Maya said, placing Damon's large hand on the ancient bark. And hope our souls know what they're doing. The tree began to glow, and Maya felt the world tilt around them. This time, she was ready for it. The world spun around them like they were caught in a silver tornado. Maya felt herself being pulled, stretched, turned inside out and right side up again. Then, suddenly, everything stopped. She was lying on the soft earth beneath the ancient oak, staring up at the evening sky through familiar amber eyes. Her own eyes, in her own body. Maya, Damon's voice came from beside her, his actual voice, deep and warm and perfectly him. She turned her head to see him pushing himself up on his elbows, looking down at himself with wonder and relief. Broad shoulders, intimidating height, dark eyes that crinkled when he smiled. He was himself again. "We did it," she breathed, sitting up and marveling at how right everything felt. Her smaller hands, her narrower shoulders, her own heartbeat in her own chest. "We did it," Damon agreed. Then his expression grew urgent. "Maya, we need to get back to the hospital." "Marcus, wait." Maya caught his arm as he started to stand. "Before we go back to our lives, before everything changes again, there's something I need to tell you." Damon settled back down beside her, giving her his full attention. "I know we said we wanted to try being mates," Maya said carefully. "But Damon, I need you to know that this week, being you, seeing the world through your eyes, I didn't just fall for the idea of you. I fell for you, all of you. The way you care about your workers, the way you read poetry, the way you cried when that puppy was born." Damon's eyes softened. "Maya, let me finish. I fell for your stubbornness and your kindness and the way you put hot sauce on absolutely everything. I fell for the man who drives his workers home when their cars break down and tips baristas $20 for $4 coffee." She took a shaky breath. "But most of all, I fell for the way you see me, really see me. Not as someone who needs to be fixed or changed or toned down, but as exactly who I am." Damon reached for her hands, his touch sending familiar sparks through her system. "Maya, do you know what the hardest part of this week was? Learning to perform surgery without killing anyone?" He laughed. "No, though that was definitely challenging." His expression grew serious. "The hardest part was realizing that for the first time in my life, I was exactly where I belonged. Not because I was in your body, but because I was with you." Maya felt her breath catch. "I spent 3 years telling myself I was better off alone," Damon continued. "That caring about someone was just setting myself up to be hurt again. But this week, you made me remember what it feels like to be part of a team. A real partnership where both people make each other stronger." "Damon, I'm not finished." He smiled, that soft smile she'd learned to love. "You want to know what I fell for? I fell for your fierce protectiveness of every creature you meet. I fell for the way you make the hard decisions and take responsibility for the consequences. I fell for your terrible attempts at construction terminology and the way you organize everything by color." Maya laughed through the tears. She didn't realize she'd been crying. "But mostly," Damon said, reaching up to cup her face in his hands, "I fell for your courage. The way you dove headfirst into living someone else's life, the way you're willing to fight for what you believe in, the way you were ready to sacrifice everything to protect me and my workers." "We were ready to sacrifice everything," Maya corrected. "Both of us." "Yeah," Damon agreed softly. "We were." They sat there in the gathering darkness, foreheads touching, breathing the same air, finally themselves again, but somehow more than they'd been before. "Maya, I love you." The words hung in the air between them, simple and profound and absolutely terrifying. "I love you too," Maya whispered back, "which is probably crazy, considering we've only really known each other for a week. The craziest part is that it feels like I've been waiting for you my whole life." Maya felt something settle deep in her chest, a sense of rightness that had nothing to do with magic and everything to do with the man holding her in his arms. "So what happens now?" she asked. "Now we go to the hospital," Damon said firmly. "We make sure Marcus is okay, and we deal with the consequences of the accident. Together? Together, as partners. And after that," Damon's smile was soft and sure and full of promises. "After that, we start figuring out how to build a life together. The right way this time, with both of us in our own bodies, with both of us exactly where we belong." As if summoned by their words, Maya's phone buzzed with a text from the hospital. She read it aloud. "Marcus out of surgery. Doctors optimistic about full recovery. Family notified and en route." They both sagged with relief. "Thank God," Damon breathed. "There's more," Maya said, reading further. "Initial investigation suggests equipment failure, not structural issues. Insurance will cover everything." Damon stared at her. "Equipment failure?" Apparently the scaffolding company had a recall on those particular brackets. It wasn't the extra concrete that caused the collapse, it was defective equipment they should have replaced months ago. "So the modifications you made actually made the structure safer than it would have been otherwise. The extra support probably prevented more serious injuries." They looked at each other in amazement. "The universe really does have a twisted sense of humor," Damon said finally. "Or maybe it just wanted to make sure we had our priorities straight." "What do you mean?" Maya smiled. I mean, maybe the crisis wasn't about the accident at all. Maybe it was about whether we'd choose each other over everything else we thought mattered. Damon considered this. And did we? We were both ready to give up everything to protect the other person. I'd say that's a pretty clear choice. So the magic worked after all? The magic brought us together, Maya said, standing and offering him her hand. But we chose to stay together. That's all us. Damon took her hand and pulled himself to his feet, then used their joined hands to draw her closer. Maya Winters. Will you be my mate? My partner in everything, not just disasters? Maya smiled, rising on her toes to meet him halfway. Damon Cross. I thought you'd never ask. When they kissed, it was perfect in a way that had nothing to do with magic and everything to do with two souls who had finally found their way home. Maya tasted like herself again, coffee and mint and something uniquely her. Damon smelled like himself, cedar and warmth and the faint scent of construction dust that never quite left his skin. They broke apart only when they needed to breathe. So what's our first decision as official partners? Maya asked. Damon grinned. We go to the hospital to check on Marcus. Then we go home to whichever home you prefer and we start planning our life together. Your place or mine? Both. We'll figure it out as we go. As they walked back toward Damon's truck, hands intertwined, Maya felt a deep sense of contentment settle over her. She was herself again, but she was also more than she'd been before. She was part of something bigger, something that made both of them stronger. Damon, yeah, next time we have a crisis, let's try to handle it in our own bodies. Damon laughed, the sound rich and warm in the evening air. Deal. Though I have to admit, this was the most effective relationship counseling I've ever experienced. Relationship counseling via body swap. I'm pretty sure there's not a manual for that. Good thing we're both good at figuring things out as we go. Maya squeezed his hand. Good thing we're partners. Partners, Damon agreed. In everything. And as they drove toward the hospital, toward Marcus and their responsibilities and their future, Maya knew that whatever came next, they would face it together. In their own bodies, with their own hearts, but as one soul split between two people who had finally found their way back to each other. The magic had brought them together, but love would keep them that way. 3 months later, Maya woke up in Damon's bed, their bed. She corrected herself to the smell of coffee and something that might have been pancakes but could just as easily have been a construction accident. Given Damon's cooking skills, it was honestly 50-50. She padded downstairs in one of his oversized t-shirts to find him standing at the stove, wearing nothing but pajama pants and an expression of intense concentration as he flipped what were definitely pancakes. Slightly lopsided, probably burned on one side, but definitely pancakes. Morning, beautiful, he said without turning around, somehow always knowing when she entered a room. Morning, chef, she replied, wrapping her arms around his waist from behind and pressing a kiss to his shoulder blade. How many smoke alarms did you set off this time? Only one. I'm getting better. You are, she agreed, meaning it. Damon's domestic skills had improved dramatically since they'd officially moved in together a month ago. He could now make coffee without breaking the machine, do laundry without turning everything pink, and cook exactly 3 meals without causing property damage. How are you feeling? He asked, turning in her arms to study her face. Maya felt heat rise in her cheeks. Her heat was due to start in 2 days, which meant Damon's rut would follow exactly 1 week later. It was their first cycle since becoming mates, and they were both nervous and excited and terrified. Restless, she admitted, anxious, like something's building. Damon's eyes darkened with understanding and barely controlled desire. Me too. It's like everything in me is pointing toward you. Is that how it's supposed to feel? I don't know, but it feels right. They'd spend hours talking about it, planning for it. Maya had stocked both cabins with supplies, Damon had cleared both their schedules, and they'd made arrangements for Dr. Peterson to cover the clinic while Marcus fully recovered, and now Damon's assistant foreman handled the construction sites. Damon? Yeah? Are you nervous? He was quiet for a moment, his hands settling on her hips. Terrified, he admitted, not of the physical stuff, but what if I'm not what you need? What if I can't take care of you the way you deserve? Maya reached up to cup his face in her hands. Hey, look at me. Dark eyes met hers, vulnerable and worried. Do you remember what you told me about partnership? That both people make each other stronger, exactly. Heat isn't about you taking care of me, Damon. It's about us taking care of each other. Just like we've been doing for 3 months. But heat is different. You'll be vulnerable. And a week later, you'll be vulnerable during your rut. We'll take turns being strong for each other. Damon smiled, some of the tension leaving his shoulders. When did you get so wise? I learned from this alpha I know. He's pretty smart, even if he does burn pancakes. Hey, these pancakes are perfectly. Damon turned back to the stove and swore. Okay. They're completely charcoal. Maya laughed, standing on her toes to kiss him. I love your charcoal pancakes. You love my charcoal everything. I love you, everything included. The timer on the oven shows that moment to go off, and Damon's face lit up. But I also made backup breakfast. He pulled out a perfectly golden coffee cake, and Maya raised an eyebrow. You bought that? She accused. I heated it up in the oven. That counts as cooking, if you say so. They were sharing the coffee cake and planning their day when Maya's phone rang. Dr. Peterson's name appeared on the screen. Maya, I'm sorry to bother you on your day off, but we have an emergency. Car accident. Victim. German Shepherd mix. Multiple trauma. I could really use your expertise. Maya glanced at Damon, who was already nodding. I'll be there in 20 minutes, she said. An hour later, Maya was elbow deep in emergency surgery, while Damon sat in the waiting room, fielding calls from his construction sites and keeping Marcus updated on the morning's crises. It was their routine now, supporting each other's work, covering for each other when needed, celebrating each other's successes. Dr. Winters, Sarah, the vet tech, poked her head into the break room where Maya was cleaning up after the successful surgery. There's someone here to see you. Maya looked up to see Mrs. Henderson standing in the doorway, carrying a familiar cat carrier. Mrs. Henderson, is everything okay with Mr. Whiskers? The elderly woman smiled. Oh, he's fine. Better than fine, actually. I wanted to thank you. Thank me? For whatever you did differently during his last checkup. Ever since then, he's been the sweetest, most well-behaved cat. It's like he finally trusts veterinarians. Maya felt warmth spread through her chest. I'm glad he's doing well. He's not the only one who's changed, Mrs. Henderson continued, giving Maya a knowing look. You seem different too, dear. Happier, more settled. I am, Maya said softly. I really am. After Mrs. Henderson left, Maya found Damon in the waiting room, sprawled across 2 chairs with his long legs stretched out, reading what looked suspiciously like poetry. Pablo Neruda? She asked, settling onto his lap. He has some interesting thoughts on love, Damon said, wrapping his arms around her. Want to hear? Always. Love is so short, forgetting is so long, he read softly. But I love your feet only because they walked upon the earth and upon the wind and upon the waters until they found me. Maya felt tears prick at her eyes. That's beautiful. It reminded me of us. All the years we spent walking toward each other without knowing it. Speaking of walking toward each other, Maya said, pulling back to meet his eyes, I've been thinking about our cabins. What about them? What if we connected them, built a bridge between them, or maybe even a walkway, so we could have space when we need it, but still be together? Damon's eyes lit up. That's actually brilliant. Your cabin for heat, mine for rut, and a connection between them for everything else. You could design it. Something beautiful and functional. We could design it, he corrected. Partners, remember? Partners, Maya agreed, kissing him softly. They were interrupted by the sound of heavy footsteps in the corridor. Marcus appeared in the doorway, his hard hat tucked under his arm, looking sheepish. Sorry to interrupt, boss, but we've got a situation at the Riverside site. What kind of situation? Damon asked, though he didn't move to dislodge Maya from his lap. The good kind. The city inspector loved the modifications, Dr. Winters suggested. Wants to know if we can implement the same safety features on the municipal building project. Maya blinked. The modifications I suggested? The reinforced foundation design, Marcus explained. Apparently, it's exactly what they need for the earthquake retrofitting. Could be a $20 million contract. Damon stared at Maya in amazement. You remember suggesting foundation modifications? I may have mentioned some ideas when we were reviewing the plans last week, Maya said modestly. Just about structural redundancy and weight distribution. Just about, Maya. That's advanced engineering. I've been learning from this contractor I know. He's pretty smart even if he does call cement mixers concrete spinny things. Damon laughed and pulled her closer. Have I mentioned that I love you? Once or twice. Maya said, then turned to Marcus. Congratulations on the promotion, by the way, Marcus grinned. Thanks, Doc. And thanks for making the boss human again. He actually said please when he asked me to work overtime last week. I've always said please, Damon protested. Boss, you once asked me to make the foundation more foundational. Please wasn't really in your vocabulary. Maya and Marcus exchanged amused glances, while Damon looked between them with growing suspicion. You two have been comparing notes about me, haven't you? Extensively, Maya said cheerfully. She's got stories, Marcus added. Like the time you tried to use a thermometer as a scalpel. That was a very stressful day. Or when you called anesthesia sleepy time equipment, Maya added. I was improvising. Or okay, Damon said, standing and lifting Maya with him. I think it is time we went home before you to destroy what is left of my reputation. Or what reputation? Maya and Marcus said simultaneously, then dissolved into laughter. As they drove home through the afternoon sunshine, Maya reflected on how much their lives had changed. 3 months ago, they'd been strangers who could barely tolerate each other. Now they were partners in every sense of the word, professional allies, domestic teammates, and most importantly, mates who chose each other every single day. Maya, do you ever wonder what would have happened if we'd never switched bodies? If we'd just kept disliking each other from a distance? Maya considered this, sometimes. But then I remember that the magic only worked because our souls recognized each other. Even if we'd never switched, I think we would have found our way to each other eventually. You think so? I know so, because some connections are stronger than pride, stronger than misunderstandings, stronger than whatever walls we build around ourselves. Damon reached over and took her hand, threading their fingers together. I love you, Maya Winters. I love you too, Damon Cross. As they pulled into their driveway, the penthouse was being converted into their joint office space, while Maya's cabin was being expanded to accommodate both of them. Maya caught sight of their reflection in the side mirror. Two people who looked exactly right in their own skins, holding hands and heading home together. Tomorrow would bring Maya's heat and all the vulnerability and intensity that came with it. Next week would bring Damon's rut and their chance to truly bond as mates. But today, they had this comfortable partnership, shared laughter, and the absolute certainty that whatever came next, they would face it together. The magic had brought them together, but love had made them whole. And as they walked toward their house, their life hand in hand, Maya knew that this was exactly where they belonged. In their own bodies, in their own lives, in love with each other exactly as they were. Some things, she thought as Damon opened the door and pulled her inside for a kiss that tasted like home, were worth waiting a lifetime to discover. Even if it took a little magic to get there. The end.